thoughts, you control your life. In addition to that, how to take your desire, the desire within yourself, the starting point of achievement, working within the aspects that you have, your brain, your subconscious mind, and your imagination, to actually develop goals, plans, and objectives, and work within a mastermind group to gain the specialized knowledge that you need to go out in the world and be successful. In addition to this, in working with your thoughts, we can actually use autosuggestion to help control your thoughts, which helps control your decision-making ability and your actual willpower. Along with that, we'll be taking a look at the sixth sense, how to actually develop your psychic abilities, develop the intuitive nature that you have within inside yourself. Tonight's meeting itself is actually going to be working on developing your thoughts. And how I'd like to start out with that is reading a short little poem by Rayner. And it goes, "As you think, you travel, and as you love, you attract. You are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. You cannot escape the result of your thoughts, but you can endure and learn, can accomplish and be glad. You will realize the vision of your heart, be it base or beautiful, or a mixture of both. For you will always gravitate toward that which you secretly think and believe. Into your thoughts you will receive that which you earn, no more, no less. Whatever your present environment may be, you will fall, remain, or rise with your thoughts, your vision, your ideal. You will become as small as your controlling desire, as great as your dominant aspiration." Well, the idea of tonight's meeting is to actually work with you to realize that your thoughts really do create your world. As I mentioned in the last program, Zoroaster 4,000 years ago said, "Good thoughts, good words, good deeds." In other words, the thoughts that you think create the words that you speak, which create your deeds or your actions out in the world. So, can we control our thoughts? What do you think? It's amazing to me that through all of the education that we go through, that we can't and haven't worked with controlling your thoughts. When we come back, we'll go through exactly how we can go ahead and do this. Get into that, let's talk about what we did last week. As you remember, we talked about a practical exercise on how to be a better conversationalist. If you were here with us last week, we looked at three aspects of being a better conversationalist. The first fundamental was to be a good listener. That if you're talking with someone, trying to communicate with them, and you're reading the newspaper or you're looking through the mail, that's not effective communications. And being a good conversationalist, you need to be a good listener, to look at that person, to give them visual approval, nodding of the heads, and then also giving verbal approval. In many cases, just a couple grunts would do, right? The second fundamental was to ask questions. It wasn't just asking questions, though. It was asking the right kinds of questions. We did a little memory exercise talking about how your mind thinks in pictures. For instance, if I said the word car, you wouldn't see the black letter C-A-R. You would actually see a physical car. Or if I said the word house, you would actually see the physical house. In asking the right kinds of questions, what we did was we went through a stack of silly, goofy objects to help remember what kinds of questions we can ask. That stack, again, was the first object was a walnut nameplate. On top of that was a red brick. Were you watching last week? You should have been. Red brick house. The next object coming out of the chimney of the house was a white work glove. In the palm of the work glove was a gray Boeing 747. Instead of propellers on the airplane, we had Wilson wooden tennis rackets. screwed into the middle of the tennis rackets was a pink 13.5 watt light bulb. Now, who cares about those silly, goofy objects? What difference does it make? Well, when you talk about asking the right kinds of questions, each of those objects represent the question that we can ask. For instance, the walnut nameplate would stand for what? What is your name? The red brick house would stand for where do you live? The white work glove would stand for where do you work? The airplane would stand for do you get a chance to travel? The propellers would stand for do you have any hobbies? And the red 13.5 watt light bulb would stand for what are your ideas in regards to something. Then we went into the third fundamental. I gave you a couple examples. One example was if we just went through those questions, we met someone and said, oh, what's your name? Where do you live? Where do you work? Do you get a chance to travel? Do you have any hobbies? And do you have any ideas? That wouldn't be a very good conversationalist either. What we talked about would be the third fundamental, which is using the 6 honest serving men. Kipling once wrote, there are 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I know. Their names are who, what, when, where, why, and how. What we talked about doing is then each of those aspects of the questions actually asking 1 or 2 of the 6 honest serving men. And there we can find out more about the individuals we're talking with so they know that we're genuinely interested in them and they have a better feeling for us. Plus, it's a great way to meet people and get to know them. Okay? In addition to that, last week we talked about the idea of controlling your thoughts, and I gave you a couple exercises. One was to actually watch your thoughts during the day, and when a thought came up that wasn't as positive as you wanted to be, or that you didn't want to have come back to you, that you actually said cancel, cancel, or erase. The whole object in that is that when you think a thought, that goes out into the universe and then comes back to you. Okay? In many cases, the example I gave was that of if you were to picture a fishbowl that was filled 3/4 filled with water, and you took a pebble and you dropped it into the middle of the water, what would happen when it hit the water? It would create a ripple. Well, that ripple would hit the sides and then come right back into the middle. This is the same effect as saying a thought, thinking a thought, saying those words in real life situation. In other words, it's like the law of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. Okay? So we talked about that, and the other example that I gave you and other exercise I gave you was to watch your thoughts when you go to sleep and when you wake up. Well, what happened? Well, if you really did that, you saw that you were thinking about things that happened during your day, maybe things you needed to do the next day, or if it was in the morning, the things you have to do. Now, the question is, when you looked at those thoughts, what was the attitude that you took? Were you happy? Were you sad? Were you angry? The big question is not exactly what were they, even though you need to look at that. But if it wasn't what you want, if you were angry, how do you change that? Okay? Do you want to change it? If you realize that the thoughts that you think really create your life, and if you take hold of this idea and actually work with it, you'll find some tremendous things. 2 things happen. One is then you look back at your life and you realize that everything that happened to you, whether it good or whether it bad, you created. That's the worst part about it. Because haven't we normally blamed other people for the things that have happened in our life? Now, if we can do that and actually take that responsibility,